Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. It is actually May, not March. So for the just it's bit afternoon, early afternoon. Checking you on your toes. So great to be here. Delighted to talk to you today a bit about actually how we're delivering net zero transport and what needs to be done. We as GRIDSERVE are at the very forefront of this space. I think we're charging more electric cars each month than anybody else in the UK at this moment in time. I'm going to kind of explain how we're doing what we're doing, but really it's important to understand why we're doing it and why we come to an event like this, and really what we're all about. And that's actually front and center of where GRIDSERVE are, because even though we're doing an awful lot, we're not doing a fraction of what needs to be done. We really need to step everything up if we're going to have a chance of moving the needle on climate change, i.e. changing the trajectory from where we are today, where it all seems a bit too difficult, to where we need to get to. Specifically, I would encourage people, it's not really very, it's not comfortable reading, but the greatest update that we have, the most recent information we have, came out from the IPCC, the world's leading scientists of the United Nations, 2 months ago. It's something called the IPCC Synthesis Report. It's pretty depressing reading, but it is reality. We're in final chance territory. Specifically, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said, he referred to it as a clarion call. We need to fast track absolutely everything we're doing on every sector, climate change action, all at once, all fronts, everything, everywhere, all at once. It's pretty horrific kind of wording, and why is it, why is it so important? And again, what is this really all about? Again, I'm not going to spend much time talking about climate science, but it is just important to kind of illustrate the urgency, what we need to address this challenge at. 4 data sets going back 800,000 years. The person who gave me this chart was one of the authors of the IPCC synthesis report. And this is climate change going back 800,000 years. I think it's pretty clear for anybody just to kind of look at this and recognize there's a very close correlation between these data sets, but they are completely different sets of data. On the top we have carbon emissions in the atmosphere. You can see they're very closely correlated to temperatures, which is no surprise. That's also very closely correlated to the ice volumes. Which, again, if ice melts, the sea rises. And that's been happening in kind of long cycles over the last 100,000 years. But unfortunately, this is what's happened in the last 100 or so. And specifically, this is the problem that we are trying to address. This is a problem that has happened since we started burning fossil fuels, which release carbon dioxide. All this amazing carbon dioxide was absorbed by plants and animals hundreds of millions of years ago to form fossil fuels. We've thrown it out as quickly as we possibly can. We now have concentrations of carbon dioxide in the air at the highest level in at least 2 million years. And the world's leading scientists say that it's our last chance. This is our opportunity. It's going to be dealt with now. So people like you and me and us and everyone available now has the opportunity. But after this, it's just not really going to be possible for future generations to deal with it. So it's pretty hairy at the moment. This is what 1.1 degrees of warming looks like. I think we remember the UK last year, 40 degrees of warming. We had heat waves in Europe at the same time. We had flash floods in Pakistan. At the same time, we had monsoons, hurricanes, and so on. As we've heard from the various speakers today, which I guess is probably why people are all pretty much at this event, is that we are going to massively bypass the safe level that the government, the world's leading scientists say is possible, of 1.5 degrees of warming, and we're heading for 2 to 3 degrees, if not beyond. So how are we going to sort it out? What is it we're actually going to do about this? How are we going to deliver net zero? And specifically, we as a business are focusing on net zero transport. And what we're doing is we're aligning the speed that we're delivering infrastructure with this underlying science that's required to keep temperature rises within 1.5 degrees of warming specifically. It's a number, it's a finite number of tons of carbon that would be left that we can emit. And unfortunately, this is the graph that we need to somehow deliver. Again, it's a really uphill battle. But the sort of black chart on the left-hand side shows historical carbon emissions, and the green chart shows what we need to do to hit 1.5 degrees of warming to maintain levels. The blue is 1.7, and the red is 2.0. But what does that really mean? First of all, that looks incredibly challenging. We cannot continue business as usual. Business as usual is not going to get us there. We need to take serious action. We need to do it very quickly, and that's what GRIDSERVE are absolutely at the forefront of doing. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. To give you a difference between 1.5 and 3 degrees, and 2 degrees, because what does it really mean? I had a conversation with one of the world's scientists from the IPCC, and I said, so what is the difference? What does it mean? And they said, well, Toddington, as an example, at 2 degrees of warming, 99% of all the world's coral reefs cannot survive. And we're on a trajectory at the moment to blow past 2 degrees. And that's on our watch, everybody. So we need a plan as a starting point. One thing I would encourage people to do is go and get a book. This is what the book is called. I'm not on commission. It's called Speed and Scale. It's written by a chap called John Durr, who's an amazing brain behind Silicon Valley and some of the most incredible companies like Google that's propelled them forward. They have put a plan in place. It's the sort of plan that they give to companies like Google that allow them to hit targets. And what they've done is they've said, if we're going to address that incredible challenge of climate change, what do we need to do about it? What is the plan? And the plan involves reducing carbon emissions across different areas. About half of that is from transport and energy, and then other points come from area. And it's about a target to get to a reduction of 59 gigatons of carbon emissions, of annual carbon emissions, every year by 2050, and halfway there by 2030. So there is a plan. We need to. There is the science that this plan is aligned to the science of climate change, and we as a business are focused on the transport and also the power side of that. Specifically, again, this relates to the same plan. We need to have a target of 50% of the world's miles are electric by 2040. And to put a number on that, there's about 17.5 trillion miles driven every single year. That's a very big number. In the UK, there's around 370, if you add the numbers together, billion miles driven every year. And actually, if you think, we're not doing too badly in terms of we're actually, off the starting blocks. 7% of all the miles driven last year were electric. Seems more than I thought. And when you look at the actual data, most of that was buses in China, by the way. Around 1% is from cars. But anyway, that's what we need to do. Getting electric cars isn't going to solve the problem. We need to get electric cars that are powered on clean energy, and we need to use them instead of fossil fuel vehicles. So they need to be as easy to use as fossil fuel vehicles, and provide a better experience, and ideally cost you less overall than petrol and diesel too. So that's what we're working on. We're delivering a system called Sun to Wheel. It's a net zero equivalent of well to wheel. So instead of oil wells, and actually the energy in oil and gas, people don't really think about it. They think it comes from the ground. It definitely doesn't come from the ground. It comes from the sun. The energy was absorbed from the sun hundreds of millions of years ago by plants and animals at the same time extracting carbon out of the air, and it's in the earth. And so we extract that from an oil well, we then refine it in a refinery, we transport it in pipelines and tankers, we distribute it in petrol stations, and we burn it in combustion engine vehicles. And that's a system called well to wheel. That's what's ultimately caused this problem, or at least a big part of it. And we as GRIDSERVE are building a net zero equivalent of that. It's called Sun to Wheel. So we build solar farms instead of oil wells, same energy, skip the 300 million years. We refine it with batteries. We transport it in cables and tankers. Cables and grids, definitely not tankers. Although we're about to start transporting tankers, and I'll come back to that. And we distribute it through electric forecourts and electric hubs, and ultimately into electric vehicles themselves. And we have a lot of technology that we've created to make that system work. So when we talk about building a solar farm, this is the sort of thing that we build. We built that in 6 months. Here's an interesting statistic for you. Every acre of land in the UK, and I know this because I built vast numbers of these, thousands and thousands of acres, every acre of land in the UK that you can build a solar farm on average, you can produce enough energy every year to drive 1 million electric vehicle miles every year from a solar farm. That same solar farm, by the way, you can turn into a nature sanctuary and give back to nature, because according to the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, humans have also managed to wipe out more than 70% of the world's wildlife in the last 50 years as well. So that's also, by the way, on our watch. And climate change isn't going to help. You need to have infrastructure that's going to give people the confidence to make the transition and the ability, so we build solutions like this. This is an electric forecourt, the first of its type. In Essex, if anyone hasn't been, you're absolutely welcome to. It really gives people the confidence to make the transition to electric cars. The last one we built was in Norwich, which is this. People say, look at it, and they go, that's not real, is it? No, that definitely is real. It's been operating for more than a year. In fact, we're about to launch one at the end of this year in Gatwick, which is where I was this morning. So we're having a site very similar to that on the South Terminal at Gatwick. We've got dozens of sites in development, and I haven't got very long. So we're building sites like this across the motorway network. We're charging, I think I mentioned, around 150,000 cars every single month. People are talking, is the infrastructure going to be there? You see articles in the paper saying it's not happening quick enough. It is, by the way. We've got more sites in construction now than we've built in total. By the end of next month, I'll have double again. We're putting huge amounts of chargers, 350 kilowatt chargers across the whole motorway network. Well, at least 60% of it. And we're doing it incredibly quickly, as well as building this other infrastructure. So if people are on the fence and saying, should I get an electric car? Yes, go and get an electric car. If you're worried about long journeys, don't be, because we are on it. In fact, the reason we're here is to try and get people electric cars, because it costs quite a lot of money to do what we do. And it doesn't work if people don't have electric cars. So if anybody is in this room who doesn't have an electric car, or knows people who don't, please just get them to, because we all need to do what we can do. I have people like over here. If anyone, GRIDSERVE people, put your hand up, wants to talk about electric car or leasing cars for your company or whatever it might be. But it's really, really important that people get into electric cars, and that will allow organizations like ours to continue to raise the funding to develop them. It doesn't have to be more expensive. If you are a company and you have a fleet of vehicles, you can have a salary sacrifice scheme. And people can get electric cars significantly cheaper than petrol and diesel already today. Again, please do come and have a conversation with us. We have a stand just around the corner as well around that. And by the way, I heard something about, is anything coming for trucks? I did talk briefly about tankers. So I would just say, watch this space. There's a lot of talk, and is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? It's going to be electric, and it's going to be coming very soon. I can guarantee it. So I guess in summary, wrapping up, we're here, we talk a lot about 2050, when in reality the science says we need it now. So let's not kind of think, oh, we've got until 2050. No. We need it now. We're at 1.1 degrees of warming. It's getting worse all the time. In fact, Antonio Guterres recommends that for developed nations, we need to aim for 2040 as opposed to 2050. So it's just really, really important that we don't rest on our laurels. We need to get on with the stuff at the speed and scale that the climate crisis requires. It is on our watch. Future generations will judge us according to how we delivered. And wouldn't it be great, won't it be great, if we are the ones when they look back and they say, look, that lot, those people, they knocked it out of the park. They knew, the evidence was clear, the scientists told us, the solutions were available, they were cost effective, and you know what? They absolutely delivered. Isn't that a much better story to tell than what it currently feels like at the moment? So solving climate change protects not only life on our planet as we know it, and that's quite a big statement, it's also almost certainly the greatest economic opportunity of our lifetimes as well. It's cost effective to do this. The economics are certainly on side. So there's a huge amount to win. I don't really think there's anything to lose. So let's do it. Let's knock it out of the park and let's do it together. Thank you.